on Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. We have gathered tonight for a special board meeting, a facilities workshop. We will recess and go into an executive session for 30 minutes to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. So we should be out here at 6:30. Thank you.
Is it really going to take 30 minutes?
No.
Because we can't come out early.
Yeah. Said.
Okay, 30 minutes. 30.
So if they say 30, you can't come out at 25? Correct. Right. You just sit in there?
There's snacks.
Executive session and back into this special board meeting, the facilities workshop. We have a facilities presentation by the district. We had a lot of information thrown at us, some stuff from 2018, 2019, several of the meetings we've had. Some of the work that the committee put together as far as needs, wants, timeframes, and all that other good stuff. So, Chris, blow us away.
So we're gonna, we actually have this broken up in parts, so we're gonna have Jeanette start first, and then we'll kind of take turns.
So this presentation is kind of a compilation of things we've talked about previously, some new ideas and options for the board to consider. We really want this to be as productive and formal yet informal at the same time, and just really get the creative juices flowing and move the train.
Yep.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Just a kind of an update on the warehouse. In the next slide, there's some steps, just so you guys have kind of the steps of purchasing, and the things that we'll be kind of working through in the next several, months, depending on what things happen. But
What
once a
does PSA stand for?
purchase and sale agreement, it's spelled out
Okay,
right
thank
there,
you.
too.
Oh, you're right, it does.
So once we have a signed and approved purchase and sale agreement, we will move on to a title review appraisal, a phase 1 environmental study if we need to, and a phase 2 after that if it's deemed necessary. So those are kind of the things that happen. Most of those happen all at the same time. And so those are just kind of the steps, so you guys are aware of the things that we're going to be working through. I think Greg's gonna talk about the ORTC parking lot, just kind of re-go through those options.
Just bring it back up again, that, go to the next slide. And we have some areas that need some attention with the asphalt at the ORTC parking lot. We did get some bids, around 60,000 to patch some areas, and figuring extensive amount of money to just rip up and redo the whole parking lot. I'd love to redo the whole thing, but if we could just get some money thrown at it, we can get some patching done and move on and just attack the areas that we need to attack. Whatever you guys want to give us.
Just option B, I think it's just pretty vague, 500,000 to 2 million. What's the 500,000 is like?
It's just, we go out to bid, and the people we talk to on the phone, there's some different opinions on how to fix the issue. Just like Orland's issue with the roofing we had at Lutakaga. You get one person saying, I can do it for this, another person saying, you need to do this, I'm gonna do this. So until you write up a scope of what you want done and go out to bid, you just don't have a real clear number. I realize it's a big span, but
Yeah. And option A consists of how many areas?
I think we had 3 areas identified in that bid, and it's a year and a half old.
Quick question, is that coming out of our $5 million budget, or is that part of like a maintenance budget that the district has?
It's all the same budget. As far as
I think
Yeah.
we had talked using that money that we set aside.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we had talked about using the 5
I just know
million.
that Jen had talked about okay, if moving forward, there's some sort of like a maintenance plan of like district money, anyway, okay.
Yeah,
So-
we would need some lead time to build that up.
Yes,
Right.
until,
So-
right.
Okay,
Money's money.
yeah, I hear you.
When would be the optimal time to work, assuming we went with option A? I'm not saying
Summer.
that. In the summer?
Yeah.
Okay, and these bids that you have are good through then, or?
No, we have to go out and get rebid.
So you said 2 years ago for the
I
60,000?
think it was a year and a half.
Okay,
It's right in there somewhere.
so definitely changing.
Yeah.
Here's what I don't wanna do, personally. I don't wanna ask you to get more bids and then us do nothing with it.
Mhm.
So I feel like we should be ready to make a decision before we send Greg to do more work. I own a contracting business, I know how annoying that is. And pretty soon, no one will give you a bid, and when they do, it's like,
Yeah.
you're wasting my time.
Mhm.
So I feel like we should make that decision. I mean, not that it's set in stone in case it comes back and it's 500,000 per patch, but
No, but if we had a clear discussion about, okay, let's go out to bid and we're willing to spend $100,000, go out and get some bids for the patch areas, let's not exceed that number. and fix what we can.
What kind of lead, I'm sorry, I think I'm jumping over you. What kind of lead time do you need to say, we're doing this summer, like a drop dead date, whether we're doing it or not,
I haven't
or
talked to any contractors, but just assuming from.
getting on a schedule I'm
Yeah,
concerned about for even
For
summer?
asphalt, we should have been doing it this winter. Cause they book their summers.
Yeah.
Okay, under option A, you just got Band-Aid approach.
Mhm.
Does that include the fuel station? Because the
That-
fuel station, we don't need the Band-Aid approach to that. It needs to be done right.
No, but it's still one portion of the thing, so you would fix the fuel station, fix some sinking asphalt areas that are the largest, and then if something else comes along, if it moves,
I think what he means by Band-Aid is that the area that we fix
Yeah.
that area will stay fixed.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean this area over here that hasn't been fixed is gonna be a problem next year, yeah.
How long ago have you actually done any patching? Is that something you've done with no, just yourselves?
just
yourselves
cold,
taking
just
care
cold
of
mix.
Just, yeah, a bag of mix here and there to.
Okay, and it has immediately, from the first time you built it, needed,
It
it took a couple
was
years?
no, it was right after the 1-year warranty.
And
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
that 1-year warranty. Okay.
Okay,
So just a note to the board, I would say that we should have that conversation and give Greg some definitive
Mhm.
So,
instruction as to, you know, what we're gonna do. I don't know if that can be as soon as our
can we put that on the next board meeting?
next
Yeah.
executive session or whatever,
Well,
when we have a
that
discussion about
shouldn't
these
be
things.
executive session,
Yeah.
that should be,
Yeah, it's
that's
open
just a
session.
regular meeting,
Next
because we
time.
have to make a vote.
Board discussion.
Yeah, so,
And I think that was a good idea, give them a max amount of like, we're willing to put this much into it, let's do
Yeah, if
what
you're
we
willing to
can.
give me a number and say, let's make a list of the priorities, fuel station, this hole, this hump, and then we go out and say, okay, we wanna bid 3 different bids, and we pick what we want, and
If you can get us a schematic, Greg, email it to us and say priority 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you think, and that way we can get you some.
We can include it in the next meeting. As an agenda
I'll work with
item.
Marion on what's gonna be a priority for her, too.
Sure.
If you didn't want to do all
Boss
3 of the
lady.
sections, Greg, and you just want to do one, will the bidders not go for bidding? When they're bidding, are they gonna be bidding because of 3 sections?
think it
Yeah,
depends
bidders will
on
like,
what
if you
you
have
say.
3 areas you want, they wanna bid it all at once.
Yeah,
Mhm.
They don't like to break it up.
You're gonna get it
Just more
cheaper
time.
that way.
You're gonna get it cheaper, too.
yeah. And if you want people to show up, it's like, they're not gonna show up for small potatoes.
Well, I kind of figured, but
Yeah.
I'd ask. Trying to figure out how to spread the money.
Yeah, I agree.
okay.
These things you've been taking care of as they came along.
As weather allows, you wouldn't necessarily want to wait till summer. Weather allowed, you have the bids out, you'd want to start earlier than that.
Yeah.
Because they start to dedicate crews to larger projects in the summer.
Well, yeah, this year, they'll probably get started here early this year with the way the weather is. But last year, they were sending crews out and Snowmageddon hit, so.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna affect the bus traffic though out there. There's gonna be less bus traffic during the summer than there is now.
Mhm.
True.
I guess before we get too far, I'll introduce the man at the end of the table. So for the board members that don't know, this is Dax. He's from ESD 112. He is a great resource to us. He is basically the state guru for state match funding. And so I'll let the board introduce themselves and anyone else that doesn't know Dax, but just so he's not the mysterious man at the end of the table.
Mike Garza,
Yeah.
board president at this time.
Ken Johnson?
Jen?
Lindsay Prowse.
Sharon Sweetie, I've seen you many times.
Okay.
Happy to be here. Help whenever I can. I would bring one thing up regarding the transportation site, just to give you a little more perspective of the site itself. The overall, even talking with the geotechnical engineer, and I wasn't the PM on the project, but I know when the property was purchased, there was a geotechnical analysis done, multiple. Rick can probably be more detailed about this, but there were significant anomalies below grade from soils, water where the source was unknown, etc. And many of those locations were chased and rocked to depths of what, 6, 8,
Yeah, 10.
10 feet, placed under that building. It's a very unique site from a hydrology and existing soil condition. And the district had the money they had. That was a 90% match transportation cooperative, and all the dollars available that were dedicated to that project were strategically placed to try and mitigate most all of that. And there was obviously some better solutions, asphalt thickness and depth of rock and such. But even with that, after we met the last time, I went back and talked to Travis, and he said that, living in the facility like you've been doing and identifying those worst areas like you're alluding to in the first option probably is going to be your best option, because you could go in and spend $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, because you're chasing down to try and find that stable soil, or you're spending a huge amount of money to use a geogrid and bridge that material. So, and even with that, I don't know if all the water sources were, they're almost artesian-like in many places. I know.
Just a river flowing under there.
Yeah, it's just.
And it was weird because when we did the first digs, and I was there when they did them, we only found water in one hole.
Yeah, I dug them.
And then that winter, when they started construction, the water was only a few feet down. So it's just weird.
Good summation. Like hydrological anomalies. So I guess in summary, the locations where you're seeing failures, or it's dipping or rolling, where you get a lot of busts and the wheels are loading up, and at the fueling station and those are probably the optimal fixes at this point, and then continue to monitor it. And maybe you're looking at multiple phases of that versus a strategy to try and
Just rip it all out.
rip it all out, cut it, and start over, because the likelihood of you, with that specific piece of property, the likelihood of you experiencing similar failures that you are observing now are pretty high, so.
Okay, track. I got some samples here if you want to pass them around. Different tracks you can look at. We went to KCDA, which is our purchasing cooperative. There's 2 companies listed in the KCDA contract, which doesn't make us have to go out for competitive bidding. KCDA does the bidding process. They're approved bidders. We just, if we choose to go with one of these companies, we just go with them. Hellas Construction was the first one to show up. I asked to have the bids, as we talked about earlier, separate into different sections. He was able to do that with this base bid. Just tear up the existing track surface and put down the S200 track material. And then the additional options, we have upgraded surface to their V300. We have rearranging the chutes and surface upgrades and layouts to make it more conducive to the 200 students that are going out there, and make everything to the correct runways and widths for current standards. And then Benyon is the second track manufacturer that showed up, and they couldn't break it down in the timeline we had, so they gave us one bid just to do everything, all upgrades and track surface, and then an option for an upgrade on the surface itself, which it should be BSS 300
Okay,
as
I was
the
like,
option.
Right.
Okay.
Just for some background, I asked both of them for some what's the word I'm looking for? Read my email here. Some references. Benyon did Ephrata, Quincy, Mose Lake, Ellensburg, Tri-Cities, Grandview, Wapato, Columbia, Yakima, Royal City, Walla Walla. Benyon is the company that's been around more and has done more in our area than Hella's. Hella's didn't get back to me on some references.
And has one additional warranty, year on their warranty.
One additional year on the warranty, manufacturer warranty.
Right, but then there's average life too.
Yeah, the
so
average life is
a little longer.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, with the track we had, it was a 10-year life. And I had it resealed and repainted or striped twice, and we got, 18 of good years out of it. So that's a little bit low, I think, as far as the years go.
That's the optimal.
So the both surfaces for Benyon are easily repair or resurface. The 200 can receive another 2 structural sprays, remain the same type of surface. You can upgrade to the 300 at any time. The embedded surface as well. The B300 is also very resurfaceable and receive another 5 to 7 millimeter lift, which means the thickness of it will go up. Of the 2-component polyurethane embedded texture, both. Yeah, then he goes into sales pitch. Both are very nice surfaces. Longevity. So, Benyon's been the company that's really gotten back to us when we ask questions.
And their quote lasts for
That's what I was
quite
just
a bit longer.
Yeah, they have a
February
very nice
17th.
quote, very, very professional, and I called them I didn't have samples on Friday afternoon, and Monday morning I had samples. So.
Nice.
And they can do it this summer? Did you ask that question?
We say yes real quick and give them a PO number.
Okay.
One thing you'll notice on there is the 200 surface is a black, where the 300 has a grayish tint to it. You cannot get a true black in the 300. Whether or not it just looks kind of dull black, grayish.
I feel like
Can
the
you get a
300
win?
is clearly a better material. I mean, I guess we have to decide there's good, better, best, what we want to
Well,
go.
those are the two. They have probably 10 different surface thing. Those are the two bottom. I mean, it just goes up from there in cost and.
Oh, so these aren't even the best.
The worst. Yes.
Those are what other high schools are using.
Those are our best.
What do we have right now?
Now, those prices.
What do we have?
It's none of those.
None of them.
It's below that,
They don't
okay.
sell it anymore.
That's really
They don't
good.
sell it anymore.
I don't think they do that kind of track thing.
Oh, okay.
I will say the athletic director and then Mandy Perez, the head coach, would obviously prefer the 300.
Of course.
It's softer, a little easier on the legs. If you fall on it, it doesn't feel as abrasive to them.
Okay.
And those prices are good as long as the asphalt's good underneath there right now.
Those prices do not include asphalt patching. So then you don't know what your asphalt is till you pull it
To
up.
get the other.
And that's one of the issues with time constraints is if there is asphalt repairs needed, which we think there is, you got 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
There may be some, because we had to pull places out of that track years ago when those poplar trees started growing roots through the track. And we had to pull out a whole bunch of it on that north end and replace it. So I know there's seams in there that are gonna
Need to be done.
Yeah, and if you go look at with this option, we'd replace the runways for the triple jump and the long jump, which have some wave to them, but we'd keep our pole vault in the same spot, which does have a little bit of wave to it. So I see some asphalt repair there.
But it does fix not only just resurfacing, but fixing the layout too.
Yeah,
There's already the issue.
these prices include. We currently have 1 discus throw station. This would give us 3 new discus throw stations with upgraded netting to the existing standards. This option would move our javelin that we do out on the baseball field to the infield of the football field, where it's more visible to the coaches to watch the kids that are doing it. These include a second chute being installed on the kitty corner end of the existing chute, so they'd have 2 areas they can practice 100-meter hurdles, 100-meter races, because 200 kids out there, they're running out of space. And then this option also includes adding some concrete and some more, not discus, what's the round ball?
Shot put.
Shot put throw stations. I think 4 shot put throw stations.
What's an approximate amount for new asphalt?
I'd refer to Dax on that.
Well, I would back up just a little bit. Normally when you're, I mean, if you're just looking for a patch to get, you know, yay many more years out of it, you might, I know there was contemplation about a high school project where that could be incorporated with the project, and knowing the anomalies of the football field, how difficult it was to maintain the grass. Is that any better since?
It's
Somewhat better, but
It came with new challenges too.
yeah. I'm not gonna go there that far, but it has an interior curb, doesn't it?
Yes.
So has that been spot checked for elevate? I mean, if you're gonna, that would go, the asphalt would go, you'd be starting from scratch.
We wouldn't rip asphalt out unless we had to on this project.
I understand. So if the intent is not to touch the track as a whole for a 10-year period, then this is what you're gonna need to do, no doubt, right? So tracking down the one item you can do, you can go and get a surveyor out there and take some topographic elevations of the perimeter curb and see where it's deviating, and also gives you a general idea where it's cracking too, because it usually starts to sag even though the rubber's coating it, you know, it still gets infiltration usually over time, and you start to slowly see the sag. So, well, other than visually walking around and marking, you know, where you believe there's gonna be open cracks and asphalt patch, and are you gonna patch it, you know, or you just come in and use the goop to patch it, or are you gonna cut it out and repave certain sections? You know, there's kind of a scale you go up and down with the level of repair. So again, I would be thinking, this is the goal now, this is likely the target goal. Is there anything you're gonna do here beyond this that's gonna impact that and change the decision of that might be made regarding the track before you know, a new track, 1.4 million. But if you're talking about 550 or and on up, and then another
660, another 150 grand for repairs.
yeah, so you start
750.
quickly approaching it, and you're still, for the most part, dealing with an antiquated subgrade and a football field that is difficult, if not impossible, to crown and maintain with those parameters that you're working with. And it's difficult because you get down yay deep, you can't really.
So there's a whole level of costs that we could get into once we get to asphalt, is what you're saying. Depending upon once they get down there, and then there's options. The cheap options, the more expensive options, the long-term
Right, it's gonna-
fixes, right.
It's a chase, and it's a similar dynamic as the cooperative, only in this situation, you have students running around on it, and safety, and
Okay.
Yeah, but insurance trying to find out, is it gonna be another $250,000?
Right,
True.
but tax doesn't answer questions like that.
That's what I was
No, no,
trying to
no.
get,
I would
I mean,
say-
like,
I
no
was
low
just
ball
wondering if
or
there's
high
like a-
ball, but.
it's highly likely. And the other problem you run into when you have extensive patching on a track is, even if tracks for this summer are already lining up, and the way opinion goes is they get an order and they put it on the schedule, and they start going tick, 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 tick around the corner, and they have projects lined for every week across the summer. And if you're not ready, or you're still making repairs, or if they're coming and doing the grind, if they're not getting a crew out, grinding it off, locating the cracks, making all the repairs, and the repairs are done, the day the actual track installation crew comes, they say, it's the end of the summer. And then that can also scoot into the fall. The wet, you lose the weather, you don't have the temperature, and I'm just saying those are the kind of situations that I've seen with, not that it can't be done, it just becomes more complex as you try and address all the anomalies and be ready when they say, well, we're gonna be there in 4 weeks, and they come in 2 and they don't care, you know,
Is there any way they can get to it before summer, Greg? Is there a break between the last sport at OHS to
I
when?
think track state is
Tracks.
literally the weekend of
Yeah.
graduation.
Is it possible to have a company come in and just rip the darn old track off? I mean, it's at the end of its life. Why not peel it back and then we'll know where we're at?
Yeah,
That's kind of what I'm asking, if there's a break to where we can try to gain some time, and whoever we go with,
The problem is, for scheduling, you should be scheduling right now. So you'd already, if you're gonna do the rip the track off thing, you can't do that until June.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say, what
you're-
is that, yeah.
I mean, we're gonna pay them to rip it off anyways. They're gonna come do it in June. We're not gaining anything there if we schedule with them. You know, it's,
maybe try and get some language in the purchase order contract that states
You
you'll,
want this many weeks between when you rip it off.
right,
and when you
Yeah.
come out.
as soon as available when school's out, track season's done, you'll tear it off between these dates, allow for clear evaluation like Warren was saying, and to define what needs to be repaired and,
one thing with this company also was I gave him names of local contractors, and he did reach out to them, and they contacted me and said that he did reach out to them. So he's looking at local contractors to get some of this work done, where he's not having to bring somebody over from Seattle to rip the track off. You call over here and say, okay, you guys, you're already there, need it done this week.
You do
and
that
then-
part, right, we'll
So
move on.
then it sounds like we're using this track this spring.
I haven't
Otherwise,
heard
why
that
do
we're
we have to
not.
wait till June?
I haven't heard that we're not, but I haven't heard that we were hosting any
Yeah, I don't-
meets.
I thought you said one.
I think we're hosting one.
One?
Yeah,
they still use it to practice.
and,
throughout
yeah,
track
Yeah.
season.
what would we do
Yeah.
for the whole track season?
is it something that you might, I mean, especially with the condition, do you still host it, or is it that I haven't walked it?
The
She
athletic
got the
director
green
walked
light.
it with
Yeah.
the coach and I believe a couple other athletic directors. And
Okay,
our problem is I think that what one of the decision factors to host was to go host somewhere else. We have to take all the personnel to host a track meet somewhere else, and we have a hard time getting volunteers to come to here. Are we gonna get enough volunteers to go to Quincy and host a meet at Quincy? They were really worried about that issue. So
Probably not.
Is there any way at our next meeting we could move forward with this as well?
right, Maddie, to make a decision,
Okay.
yeah, so that, yeah, I think
Okay.
that. I mean, are we
So-
ready to make it, I mean, we can't make a decision, can't
Any other
vote
questions?
here, but,
Take advantage and talk to whoever, if there's any questions you still want answered, and we'll have a discussion to perhaps make a decision at the next meeting.
I guess
That
my
would be-
thought is, if you think we can't afford it now, we really can't afford it in 5 years. I mean, it'll be 25 or 30% higher.
okay,
Okay, moving on. This will be a quick update just for the open session. The Lee and Reynolds property. I've not gotten confirmation, but my assumption is that the city voted to approve the zoning change to light industrial on Monday. So that zoning does not allow a school to be built on that property. The current, or the previous zoning of open spaces did not allow it either. So that change, I believe, is probably effective as of now, and so we'll just need to decide what we want to do with that property moving forward. And then we're also pursuing an easement request that we received on that property as well.
Before going into this conversation for the board, we just wanted to share that the ideas that are going to be presented are just that, they're just ideas. We sat down and we had a brainstorming session for the board to consider, and if there's something that you like, we just like feedback from you and just some direction for next steps. And we understand that if you're leaning in a certain direction or not, we will want some clear feedback, but we would go back, talk about it further. And we recognize with some of these, or probably all of them, there needs to be conversations with parents, with students, with community members. But also, just to let you know, we thought about just the cost effectiveness to the district as well as we were thinking about these options. But we just wanted to reiterate, these are just ideas for the board to consider.
All right, so with those ideas and just some different brainstorming, one item that's not on here would be to stay status quo, to be where the preschool is at in that wing of McFarland, because of the student increase at McFarland, we'll look at those numbers a little bit later, that would require adding portable for the middle school students. And so with that, looking at these options, it would be, because of the size increase in McFarland being able to use that entire wing with their students, to look at, like Chris said, what are some options that we have that in theory could be somewhat cost effective and also the timeliness of it. So the first one is being portables on an elementary campus. And so as we were brainstorming ideas, one is this could be a semi-permanent location until we figure out a final permanent location for the preschool. Looking at the options, just the properties that we have and talking with Greg, Hiawatha and Lutakaga campuses are the ones that would be allow for the easiest access to place portables for that. As far as cost, it's less than a stick build, of course. It has the potential for shared resources such as playground equipment, kitchens already on the site, potentially the libraries. It can save on somewhat on the portable expense because you could take the two McFarland double portables, and the high school is going to need, because of their bump in numbers, they're going to need some portables this upcoming year. So you could transfer those McFarland portables to the high school. That would open up McFarland's parking lot again, and we wouldn't have to purchase two portables with that. All McFarland students would be back in the main building, and it doesn't displace any K-12 students with this particular option. But there are, of course, cons to it as well. One is that it's already adding to overcrowding on the elementary campuses. Yes, we try to keep it somewhat separate, right, kind of their own space, but there's just so many, there's only so much space and resources and traffic and that sort of piece. Portables don't include a lunchroom or an indoor play area, and we are going to be right up against timelines as far as when you need to order, especially that quantity. This would be something that, if it was an option that we wanted to do for this upcoming school year, would need to be decided right away in order to meet the timelines. And it goes against the board's desire to remove portables. And so we certainly recognize that. So that's an option. When we look at, let's just Google Earth, right? Looking at the campuses, this is Hiawatha's campus. Greg, with his knowledge and expertise, knowing like where to plumb things and locations, we wouldn't necessarily need this many portables. This is just saying, here are locations that portables could be placed.
That may work, pending locate, city, planning
Fire, all kinds of
approval,
things,
things like that.
Yeah.
The physical size, they would fit there. The ground is somewhat level, and those things. So.
Okay.
Yep. So ideas for Hiawatha campus, ideas for Lutakaga campus. As we look at that, this is the front of the school, and this would be off on the sides or as part of that playground area.
That was the side.
What's that?
You're pointing at the side. That's the
Oh,
side.
sorry.
There's
Yep.
the front.
I apologize. You were correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just testing
Nope.
you, and you all
I'm
passed.
just
That was
North is
fantastic.
up.
Okay. I was visualizing, how's that gonna?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So, again, looking at that option. This is another option. If we were looking at having a more permanent or physical space or location, that's already part of district property, would be to transfer the preschool to Desert Oasis and then Desert Oasis to OHS. With that, couple of things to consider for that. One is, this is a model that is not unique. It's done on other campuses and other sites where they refer to it often as a school within a school. What it allows for is for the Desert Oasis students, when you have students that need to receive special education services, Now those are more readily available. To electives, to the library, to some of those resources that other high school students have access to. Just being physically on the same campus allows for greater flexibility with that. And the idea would be, again, trying to get away from the portables idea, that this would be a more permanent location for the, well, it would be a permanent location for the preschool for the foreseeable future, but a temporary solution for the Desert Oasis students. And if the board were to look at or consider a high school remodel, that Desert Oasis would be part of that. So while in portables now, it would be looked at to have a permanent structure once that construction is complete. Again, these are just ideas, just brainstorms. I'm certainly not telling the board what to do. But that was the thinking behind that. With the Desert Oasis campus, it's nearly move-in ready. There would be some refitting, retrofitting for a smaller size student. But as they've been in McFarland and I've seen how successful that is, it wouldn't be extensive. This would also allow all McFarland students to be in the campus. It would allow those portables to be moved to the high school still. It would allow open the same benefits as if we moved the elementary campuses. Cons, 4 new portables at OHS for the Desert Oasis students for doubles, plus 2 from McFarland. Again, it would be adding portables to that. And also the idea to make sure, as Chris talked about, talking to community and parents and folks, that to recognize that that this would be temporary portables and not just, hey, we're displacing you, right? We took you out of this building and now we're just displacing you. That eventually it would lead to just as nice, if not nicer, facilities, plus the resources.
Those portables would be just a temporary solution.
That is correct.
Why we worked on the
Remodel.
full remodel of
long-term
the high
plan
school
for the
that we
school.
want to do, yes.
That is
For
correct.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so then you build that into it, so then they could have,
Yes.
you could build a campus for them on that same property, but from the ground up, hey, this is gonna be for Desert Oasis. If that makes sense.
Would you prefer us to wait till you're done before we ask questions?
You can ask questions now, or I can go through the 3 options and then bounce off ideas, however, it's your meeting, however you'd like it.
I think discuss each one as we go through.
Okay.
Okay.
I got a question for Dax on this. Could we see more state matching monies by possibly
Putting an extra
incorporating
125 students on that campus.
on the high school, Desert Oasis?
No, because the way the state calculates your eligibility, I don't know how, some of you may be a little familiar, some not, but the state segregates your K-8 eligibility and your 9-12 eligibility. Your eligibility initial basis is taking your October, in this case, your October 2019 enrollment, and that is populated into what they call a cohort survival, which gives you a 5-year projection out and translates to square footage. If you have, and then that's compared to your existing inventory, that's considered new space. So if it was constructed after 1993, you have to wait 30 years for it to be modernization eligible. So as you're referencing your high school being modernized, it's not going to be eligible for, I believe, another 10 years before the state would participate in helping with modernization of the majority of the high school. There's some pieces, the 600 wing and such, that are of age that could come down and new could be constructed, but there were several new additions with the wrestling gym and some other things. The CTE, or previous CTE, was renovated. So there really isn't any mod eligible space with the exception of that 600 wing, which really isn't a viable modernization. The intent was always to utilize a strategy of new in lieu, where in lieu of modernizing, you build new where it's eligible for modernization, but the state will give you 238 22, the area cost allowance for that square footage.
So the question would be is, sorry to interrupt you,
Go.
is Desert Oasis is in our cohort
Mhm.
as 9-12. If we put preschool into there, and we don't have K through 12 in that square footage, and we put those students into portables, how long before Desert Oasis comes out of the cohort? Because it would drop out of the cohort eventually as a
Well-
preschool.
The current Desert Oasis campus.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, as we've discussed, there are some times where they'll do a one-time grade reconfiguration, but I wouldn't do it just on that.
Yeah.
So I believe it's 5 years, to where if you're taking it out of inventory completely and saying it's gone, to where you could use it for pre-K, because pre-K doesn't factor into your eligibility calculation, it's not recognized. So if you were gonna, you could take it out of inventory and begin using it for pre-K, but it wouldn't translate into eligibility, I believe, for 5 years where it truly comes off the books.
And we have to designate it as that. Do we have to?
Yeah, you would have to pass a resolution and
Yeah.
say, this square footage, this building, this area will no longer be utilized for educational space.
So we wouldn't have the ability to move people back into it if we changed our mind 3 years later? Without another resolution,
No, the whole ideology behind that is to take it out of the inventory to, in most cases, generate revenue elsewhere by eliminating square footage that counts against you in your eligibility factor. But if you took it out and you wanted to use it for pre-K, that, I believe, is allowed. There are some rules that were put into place during the K3 class reduction times that said you could use it for this many years as a pre-K and use it immediately, even if it was new and loose space. So, no, that's kind of been ignored, meaning that when questions are asked, there's no one left at OSBI that really can answer that question because they weren't around when the language was developed, or it just isn't broached that often. So.
Okay.
My question is, how does the principal at DOHS feel about this? And is he, not just how does he feel about the temporary misplacement of being in portables, but also what are his thoughts on a school within a school? Because the last thing I would want to do is like mess up the good thing that they have going
Absolutely.
and send kids into like a place where they feel like, maybe, I don't know. So I
Yeah.
guess that's my first one.
I can tell you that Pete Perez and I met with Alejandro Vergara at OHS and Josh Tovar at DOHS prior to this, so this wouldn't be their first time that they hear this idea. We also told them that these are very green ideas, and so there's clearly no determination what that would be like. Both were 13 players, and to do that, I do think that with Desert Oasis, that they would absolutely, I think they would want to have some sort of safeguard to say that what would that look like in the end, right? How is that going to be a benefit to our system? And so, if this is something that we explore further, I think that would be one of the priority steps to take. Yeah, but like I said, Josh was absolutely like, hey, I'm a team player, right? We can do this. It's about the people. It's about the teachers. It's about the students that we have, and so. But yeah, I mean, it was something that was like, let me think on this a little bit,
Yeah. I mean,
which is completely understandable.
Yeah, yeah.
And even if the school within a school concept was explored and approved ultimately or whatever, I think it would have to be something that definitely a standalone. I mean, looking at the ideas of the modulars in both of the designs, some of those I think would possibly work, locations would possibly work better than others, you know, depending
Yep.
upon different people's input. But it would almost have to work like a vein or a capillary, only one-way traffic. Only Desert Oasis students can leave and then come back, not a two-way thing. For those that were at the site visit, this top campus for certain individual students is toxic, and to just say, oh, we're just sticking you in portables, them being at Desert Oasis, they've already expressed, made it so that they were comfortable again, and for those that were at the site visit, know what I'm talking about. So just to be, oh, we're just gonna send you out to a portable, I have huge concerns about, that's not gonna fix the problem that they've already expressed. It's not just one student or two students, that's, there's multiple versions here, but, so,
I would also hate to see if they're already struggling in school to exacerbate that problem by putting them in portables where they really have no cohesive time together, no common core space, no
ability
hallways,
to,
no-
right, no hallways to interact with each other, no way to have an assembly without having to walk through. Yeah, so,
I would think putting preschoolers in portables would be more, easy to do than Desert Oasis.
You wanna hit him now, or?
I disagree. Yeah,
Well,
They're just ideas.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
right, definitely, and.
And I, like this map right here, like you're looking at, I threw that together and sent it to Orland from far away, and then
Right,
there's a water line, those four on the bottom, there's a water line there that we
Those
have to
aren't
deal
gonna work
with.
there.
They fit there,
Right.
and then,
Oh,
and then,
exactly, I
yeah, and in
understand.
the track plan, that's where we're gonna put the discus. So if we do a track, we can't put them there anyway.
well, and the one that they're like, oh,
So-
2 here and 1 here and
Yeah,
3
it's
up
just,
there.
it's
and-
just, hey, these fit
Right.
here.
Exactly.
And we're
Just
looking
right.
at, what this is also, it wasn't why we did this, but also if we, let's say there was a decision to tear down the 600 wing at the high school, that displaces a lot of students. We're gonna need temporary portables while that construction's being built. This also serves as possible ideas of where we'd place those students. And so, so this is, here, this is this is
Right.
the batting cages, correct?
Mhm.
All right, and in this area, over here, this is the tech department, this is our current warehouse. Earlier, we discussed the possibility of purchasing a new warehouse. If this were, and these are now tennis courts, Google Earth just, I guess they don't take pictures every day.
Behind.
It's something about filming the whole earth that takes time. So again, just as floating ideas, if we were to have placements out here, which is still close enough to receive those services, but still, as you said, Director Stevenson, away, this warehouse possibly could be converted to a weight room and some of the other facilities that they have there as construction's being done. If, depending on where transportation, if they stay or if they need all that space, there potentially could be offices there, counselor's office, those sort of things. So, again, it's just looking at, what's that?
So,
You said
Oh, sorry.
transportation.
No, I apologize.
well, another ideal too, tech. Do they use a T1 line or fiber into that current building right now?
I don't
Two
know.
T1s.
Okay, so our possible new warehouse, could tech move into that? Because they had a request for more storage, and we're gonna have a lot of extra space down there. Could IT move in along with that? Free up that facility
So
too?
both, if you wanna use that old bus garage or tech, you have to put sprinklers in them. You can't put 9, 12 students in either of them without sprinklers. So you got some costs to do that, remodel costs,
Fire alarm.
fire alarm,
Rock bell,
yeah, all that stuff.
The other thing to consider about moving technology is that location there is really central to the buildings, and that's who they're supporting. And so moving them, depending on if we, purchase warehouse or wherever that ends up, that option ends up, you could drastically be cutting into service time, and just things like that.
And their server room's there.
Yeah.
That's the hub.
That's the,
That's what I was wondering. If they-
that's the hub.
Yeah.
All the schools go back to that
Okay.
room.
So that's an option. Another option to look at is kind of a, looking at still staying at McFarland, but adding portables to McFarland campus. That would allow the preschool students to have class there. That would bring all of McFarland students back into the main building, and so we'd have continuity there. And it would, and we could still use, so that, what wing is it, Jennifer, that you're in?
300 wing.
300 wing. So the classrooms along that 300 wing will be used by McFarland, and we can close that off, and they have the 3 at the end. Those could still remain as preschool classrooms. Either we saw the area that they use for their PE or stretch space and PT, those sort of spaces, they would have that, but then also have some additional portables that would look something like this. Again, you wouldn't need this many, but it would be somewhere along the line. So this would go back to McFarland. We'd have doors that were closed off here. This could still remain as preschool. And then you'd have some portables here. Some cons is you take away their football field, right? That particular field, this space. These two would still go back to OHS, so this would free up the parking lot area. And so it's just another way of looking at it. Potentially another benefit, if you want to look at it that way, that's where our parents currently are familiar with the location of where it's at, but would certainly be a temporary solution, right, or fix for that. So those were just ideas, and perhaps the answer might be a hybrid of those ideas. Maybe we like the idea of a campus on a campus, but instead of displacing students, desert wage students now, maybe it's a portable campus for a few years while construction's being done, and then you move those kids, then Desert Oasis moves in when that construction is complete, that building's now available, you could move, right? I mean, it could just be a combination of things, but these were just brainstorm ideas about possible areas that while all expensive, is less expensive than building or buying a property and totally gutting it out and renovating it, and timeline-wise has the potential to be fairly quick.
Okay, I have some questions. So you're shooting for this next school year, 2020?
We were just trying to give options that if the board wanted to move by next school year, this is kind of our thinking right now about what options we have at play.
Okay.
If the timeline is further out, then that changes our options.
Why, so we know not the entire community's on board with preschool,
Mhm.
right? So it's already kind of
Correct.
sensitive. Why now? Why now are we, before a bond, before we have a plan for a permanent home for the preschool?
Yeah.
I would just, for me personally, I feel like disrupting the preschool this year, and then in 2 years, we build something, or 3 years, we pass a bond, and then we move it again. Is there a particular reason or a rush to move the preschool now versus just hanging tight and running a bond and
Sure.
getting the facilities that we need that are a permanent home?
Yeah. One is recognizing that having the students using that 300 we at McFarland was also kind of a temporary solution until we found a permanent location. There's going to be an increase in the number of students attending McFarland next year. They can fill that entire wing with students, with McFarland students. And so some of the feedback that we've heard from the community is that it not liking that it displaces some of the K-12 students. And so by having a change, it allows that wing to be used, bring those students onto the campus. As far as supervision, for that, that new, admin team that they have, it allows for that. It frees up those 2 portables that go to OHS that needs to go because of their bump up in enrollment. Or we need to keep those 2 there, purchase 2 for the high school, and purchase an additional 1 for McFarland to cover.
So just to be able to accommodate next year, at least 1 portable that's double at McFarland, or that many classrooms.
That is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're anticipating about 40 to 50
Okay.
additional students, and then at the high school about around 100, if not a little more.
Okay.
That's just next year. How about
That's
the
just
following
next
year?
The following year, I think in 3 years' time, I was looking at about another 300 to 350 kids at the high school.
At the high school, yes.
Okay, so our option is we either buy 3 portables, 1 goes to the junior high and 2 go to the high school, or we buy 5 to 6 portables for the preschool, or DOHS, is that correct? So our least expensive option would be to buy the 3 versus buying the 6? Would be, okay. Just
Yeah,
wanted to
but
make
you would
sure.
still have to come up with another solution for the preschool
Right,
eventually. Or, I mean, you could keep it as is and just keep adding portables to McFarland or whatever.
Are the portables at McFarland, or any of those the least ones? Because they would be on the last year, but they.
No, those two we own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just at the elementaries. were the
We have
least ones.
3 leased at Wahitas and 1 at Hiawatha.
There was some recently that were leased,
And one at
just
Lutica.
returned that were on lease at the,
Oh,
At
okay.
McFarland.
Yeah, we had
There was
one
one.
on the football field that the lease was up at the end of this school year.
Uh-huh.
We didn't need it this school year, so we sent it back early and got a little bit of money back that way.
what do you guys think?
Are we still discussing that?
We can discuss
Yeah.
it now, we just
Yeah.
can't
This
like
meeting
make a
is,
vote
right?
now, we
Yeah,
just
we're not
can't,
voting,
yeah.
We're here to say what
Yeah,
are your ideas.
That's the whole point of this. I kind of like do a little bit of everything. I don't know if I want to, I like the idea of a permanent space at some point for preschool. We're not ready for next year, definitely. If Desert Oasis campus eventually could be that space, I mean, there's only 6 classrooms there, you have 10? 8 right now.
but there is,
There's space to move into, yes, to, possibly change some things around. But would that space in the long run fit if it were to be the entire cohort of a grade eventually? The square footage.
What do you mean?
DOHS for the preschool?
Yes, every student that would be then coming into kindergarten within the district, if that is the eventual plan, would they all fit in there eventually? I mean, I know that number changes, but our current numbers, I guess I should say.
Well, you put another portable in the parking lot.
Right, she loves you saying that every time, she just wants to start throwing things at you.
I mean, things that we would probably look at considering is large gathering room.
Uh-huh.
Like, could you do some internal walls and make classrooms there and still have a play area off on the side? I mean,
Right.
those would be, again, this idea is so green and so new that we would need to go and explore that if that's the direction that we're given to go and explore.
And there's no outside play area, there's,
Well, they have the fence in the back, yeah.
that you'd
so-
have to then rip up the cement that's recently been put in.
Or
I
could
mean,
you
within
just
the last
lay-
few.
the soft material on top of that.
You could do the 2-inch rubber on top.
Yes, you could just do the 2-inch rubber on top.
Okay, anyways, so if that could be a long-range plan for preschool as a permanent space, I like the idea of eventually getting to a permanent space there. We need to stop, thinking, oh, we're just gonna do this for a few years, and then we're gonna figure that out when we come to that stage, because that's where we're at right now. We're already at the, oh, this was just a temporary, now we gotta refigure this out again. But keeping Desert Oasis where they're at until they have a perfect permanent space, whether it's a school within a school or whatever, who knows? I don't know if I like the idea of them in portables here, there, and everywhere, like either at McFarland, crossing the street, there's no play space, but I don't know if them being on an elementary campus is really gonna be that much different than keeping them at McFarland's campus in portables.
My concern about putting them at Scootney's already maxed in their kitchen. I mean, their kitchen to accommodate another
It
student.
wasn't
Scooty
Scooty, it
was
was
an
Little
option.
Cugger or
Oh,
Hiawatha, but
Well,
they're both
Hiawatha's
maxed.
kitchen
I
is
mean,
small too.
Hiawatha's
That is
small.
a,
It's the
maxed.
smallest.
but that's a
Uh,
that's another logistics thing.
And we have to look at the overcrowding already.
Already
in the
that we have.
Yeah, just at the 4 elementaries.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have mentioned these are green ideas, these
Yeah,
are
yeah.
35,000 foot view opinions yet. Preschool option C, to me, alleviates several of the things that we're discussing. I'm not ready, like Jen just said, to displace DOHS until they have their own facility, to where this family atmosphere that they've created, where this student security, where this, what they feel today or how they feel today is there. I think option C, portable classrooms at MMS, where they get most of the 300 wing back, they keep the 3 along the south end, and if we have to for a couple years, get modulars placed on the football field and they go back to the field they used this year. I mean, just thinking right now, I think that would alleviate a couple of the things that we need and give us time to put the final plan together. I'm not ready, like I said, the DOHS to OHS right now, to me, isn't there right now. And like I said, I'm just one person. But I do think we need to try to get McFarland's kids all back into there, and if using most of that wing does that, adding some portables to keep pre-K there for now until we decide a permanent home for them. I, like you, think, is DOHS the ideal permanent for pre-K for, the rest of our lifetime? Perhaps not. But that's going to be the situation if we were to go to a pre-K 6, pre-K whatever. We're only going to build it for, what our needs are today, perhaps a little expansion, and then eventually we're going to be, hey, we've outgrown this. So, I mean, not that we're discussing it, not making decisions
Right.
tonight, but that's based on what I've seen, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Trying to alleviate or solve some of the immediate problems that we have.
Right.
I mean, that's just
I,
kind of sort of where I'm at.
I do like the thought of the DOHS facility for the preschool, because it's also going to be the least costliest to renovate for the preschool. And I think it will satisfy the needs for a few years down the road, quite a bit. I do like the possibility of a school within a school. They could still have their separate campus. We could work it in so they have their separate campus. But there's a lot of things that we also heard from DOHS is how they need certain other personnel. And these could be shared along with the high school. And I know we currently have students going to the high school for certain classes and stuff too, but it would also open up the doors for some other individual classes for them too. So I really like that idea of campus within a campus or a campus next
Yeah.
to them, that there would be a possibility of a lot of.
I don't like the idea of preschoolers in portables at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what else to do right now. I mean, I just think, oh man, if I had some little mama bear coming out again, my little kids in portables, but we're out of space.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
is-
portables are the reality of every school situation.
Yes.
And you think it's just Othello, like, oh, we're doing so bad, but I mean, you go to any school, you go to Tri-Cities, they built Chiawana, they had portables on it the same year they opened. I mean, it's just the reality of schools.
Yes.
So we gotta stop thinking like that portables are the devil. Of course, everyone wants out of them, but it's just, to get out of them is almost just not practical in some senses. I mean, we wanna do better, right? But to say, we're gonna do something that's gonna alleviate portables for the rest of the time isn't feasible. My concern is the community's complaining that the preschool costs money, and to buy 4 or 5 portables, I guess maybe we wouldn't have to buy them, we could rent them. I'm concerned that we're gonna say to the community, we're gonna buy 5 portables strictly for preschool, and they're gonna say, that's gonna cost you $1 million, or whatever the price tag is, I don't know. And further disconnect the community from the preschool program when I want the opposite to happen. The preschool program is great. It's affecting hundreds of children's lives for the better. And it's great for our district. And I don't want that relationship with the community to fissure. So that's my concern about spending a lot of money on portables specifically for the preschool. I mean, I also don't like the thought of 4-year-olds in portables, but I guess we can do hard things if it comes to that, and we can make it work. My concern is the community perception of spending the money on the preschool kids when they're already freaking out about educating the preschool kids, much less now we're gonna invest all this money in housing them. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay too. That's just my thought. What do you think, Sharon?
I'm against the DOHs going to the high school.
So,
I think that they are, where they're at right now, they're at a good place, and they can only do better by having them separate. I don't know what to think about. I know that the junior high school kids, I mean, we need to have them all in one building. The portables, at least the newer ones, are way better than some of the elementary schools that have those really old ones right now that need to be replaced. So we need to replace those with new and lieu. But where do we come up with funds to take care of everything? I mean, that's why you guys, prior board, I think you guys leased portables, so you wouldn't have to come up with the big bucks to buy them. And moving them is outrageous.
What is the cost of buying a portable, a 2-classroom portable?
The bid I got this month was to purchase and have it delivered, $150,000.
And then to lease is how much for 3 years?
The 3-year lease. Total price,
For all 3 years?
$93,000.
Huh. Estimated length of time that they last before they fall apart.
Well,
And I know that that's relative because some are already beyond that stage, but,
you want me to tell you how old our oldest one is?
no.
The 80s. The 80s, isn't it, Greg?
Like, what would you say is like a good length if it's not moved a bunch of times?
Yeah, if you don't move it, you can get 30 years.
Okay, if we do move it. 20?
I would like to see them replaced at 20.
Okay, 20 years.
I'm with Sharon. If we could replace some of the old ones, I'd be happy with that too.
agreed. And I'm not saying that I don't want all the middle school kids in the building, because I definitely do. But my 4th grader is in a portable, so I don't think that like a 13-year-old can't be in a portable if my 4th grader can be in a portable. Like, it's not ideal, but it could, if it can get us from getting the preschool moved out to a permanent location, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm making sense.
Yes, I think so. One student's not more important than the other.
Right,
That's what I'm
right.
hearing. Right. It makes a lot more sense to buy them, is what I'm hearing also. And then, so how long, if we decided to do new and lieu at the high school and put all these, you had some numbers in here with all of the 72 attachments that you guys had in here.
And we allotted 2 hours and it's 7:38.
Are you
Yeah.
thinking I'm gonna take a whole long time?
And we've got-
Yeah,
Is that
I
what you're
think-
trying to say?
I think some of your questions might be answered within our last few slides, which are mostly just a recap for the board.
There we go. You're
Um,
right. There, I knew I saw it somewhere.
So, I just wanted to refresh the board on kind of where we're at with our enrollment versus our student capacity at our buildings for the elementary. We've talked a lot about the middle school. For the most part, the middle school will be fine with a little bit of squishy classrooms, but those should be fine for the next number of years, obviously depending on enrollment, which is somewhat unpredictable. At this time, we feel, depending on how McCain's affects us, we feel like enrollment at the K-6 levels will be pretty flat. 7-8 will see a slight bump. So the expansion options for the elementary, so again, expanding replacing the portables with actual stick-built buildings, approximate cost, the new gens as well.
So I have a question. When you say replace portables, does that mean that that would actually work towards the K-12, K-2 grant?
K3.
K3.
Thank you.
process. Yeah.
K-3.
Yes, it would qualify because we're building
Okay.
Permanent structure.
permanent structures.
Okay.
And then the other option, a K-6 elementary school. So I guess one of the things that I wanted feedback from Dax to the board on is like that cohort model on the state match. If we make a decision now and either expand at the elementary sites or build a new K-6, are we going to be shooting ourselves in the foot 5-10 years down the road if our enrollment's trending based on what the OSPI cohort says, which is kind of right on track with what my rough projections were. Just because I think that plays into the conversation, do we spend a bunch of money now to only lose state match later?
If you're not capturing it now and you're building, in your K-8, current K-8 scenario,
You mean K-6?
K6.
So
The funding comes K-8.
Yeah,
state
Even though
match
we
comes
have K-8s,
they don't
funding comes
differentiate
K-8.
Okay, okay.
between
Right,
K3, K6,
Okay.
K8.
right.
which doesn't help us.
But it can move wherever. So if you did a K3 building, you could use K8 eligibility,
Okay.
and then 9-12 is separate. So your 2019, I just got this right before I left, but your 2019 enrollment K8 translates still to a negative 26,307 square feet of overhoused eligibility.
So we
So-
have more space than kids, right?
Based on the formula, if you take your eligibility calculation, you take your K8 count out in the cohort, multiply it times the,
All the crap that the state does.
yeah, so you end up with, you have this much improved space, which the state's saying, you have this much new space that's either been funded by OSBI, has been constructed on your own dime, but it's new space, and you need to increase your student population
To eat
based
up
on
that
the
space.
cohort by this figure in order to even get even, and right now you're 26, they're saying you have 26,300 square feet more than you need. So the likelihood of you seeing
So you're
any
saying,
eligibility on the K-8 level
'Cause
with
that's like
regard,
a half is that what, half a school? I don't know how big a school is.
It's half an elementary.
Yeah, so it's like half an elementary, which is roughly what we're seeing in our overages.
right.
well, and
So-
it doesn't necessarily translate that way
Yeah.
either because of the cohort, so it can be misleading. If you have a flattening trend, then you're not showing that upward tick. If you start to, I was gonna compare real quickly, so in 18, your K-8 overhoused was 28,429, so,
Went down by
Went down
2,000.
yeah, so you're going the right direction.
Right. Okay, so
So-
my view is to build a K-6 elementary and only being able to use the K-3 reduction grant, that's 10%. We've never built anything less than 30 to 75% state match. To build that and have that amount on taxpayers, no way. I see that as not an option personally.
So to get the state match, basically that negative number needs to be a positive number essentially.
By a lot,
Yeah,
Yeah, by a
right,
lot.
to
So
get
it's-
numbers.
It,
they need to come up with the.
so if you're moving this 2,000
Right.
square feet, in this scenario, over the last year, your 18 to 19 projection only changed 2,000 square feet. So what you have to have happen is, because it's trending based on your current population, you might have a bigger class here and there and there, but what you really need to see is your K class jump dramatically, and continue throughout and maintain that cohort survival of those students throughout, which would translate to this eventually being, those students being considered unhoused. And even though your population may be going up, it's still basing on, if you're dropping back a little here and going up a little here, if you don't have, you know, well, I'll use simple terms, 150, and you're surviving those kids from K class all the way through 9-12, that population seems to roll. Well, sometimes you have 100, sometimes you have 120, and that can ripple positively or negatively through that model the state produces, because they're looking out 5 years, and if you go from 110 K class and the next year it's 80, that is suddenly going to start a ripple. If that trend continues, 80, 80, 80, then suddenly that curve is trailing off, because those lower K classes are going to migrate through your K-12 and ultimately prevent you from heading the other direction.
Okay, so essentially it's not cost effective to do anything now or
If you could
for a
find
while if we want state match.
right, if you could find us, and you know, looking at the growth you have from residential housing and economic development around the area, will that eventually have? I believe it will. Now, at what path? Sometimes you can utilize a demographer or other entities, birth rate, this and that, to get a better idea of what you might be looking at from a growth standpoint that could then be translated back to give you a better idea when you're going to have that unhoused eligibility potentially. Is it going to be, what's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years out? And there's Hovey, I don't know that I use them, but there's other entities that can help do that, and maybe that's something you need to look at if you're solely going to determine, well, do you do anything at the K-6 level, if, or simply not if you don't have the state support. Well, at this point, you're going to have the 2.3 million in K3 class reduction, which I think you're ticking on a timeline conversation we had, Dr. Hirsch.
Yeah.
So
There might be some workarounds with that, just depending on what the state considers design phase.
So Dax, just to be clear, the department doing the cohort for funding for schools is a completely different department than is telling us to have lower class sizes, telling us we should be pushing preschool, telling us, I mean, OSPI wants all these other things going on. People on YouTube are watching this, I want to
It's
be
the
clear that
legislature.
the legislation is, our overcrowding is due to other things that have come from legislation. It doesn't necessarily translate into this cohort for funding.
right.
Yeah.
That's correct, but I think they know there's a need, and the problem comes about when you say, well, let's take the 90 square foot per K6 student that calculated in the cohort, so you get 90 square feet per cohorted out K through 6. If they make that 100 square feet, and then 7-8, which is 117 square feet, if they make that 130, and the 130th high school, if they do this 7% increase across those
So,
proportions, they want to do that. They've looked at it. They said they're going to look at it. They're going to phase it in over 6 years. There's always these good intentions early in the budgetary planning, but I can sit there with the projects we're managing and start totaling it up. You know, I can plug it in and go, wow.
Money runs out
Yeah,
real
it
fast
just,
at the state level.
it translates to
Big bucks.
billions like that.
well, Pasco and Richland has went through something similar, you probably know. They've lost their, because of the cohort, 90 square feet. And I heard they were trying to push for 120. But I don't know how long that could take.
They have been,
They've
and
talked
it's,
about it for a long
Yeah.
time at the ledge level.
yeah, I mean,
So just to be clear,
Yeah,
because
I'm
this
familiar
is
with
new
those,
to me,
but it's,
are we
Yeah,
like
they would-
5 years away from getting state match or longer? I mean, what is
Depends
this
on enrollment.
translating
It depends
into?
on-
yeah, so it's so
It's
hard
all
to
about
predict, and
enrollment.
your resources to have a better look at that would be to go out to an entity that does those types of studies where they can look 3 and 5 years out, and they look at plan development in the area, they look at birth rate over a period of time, and they try and take all those factors into play and give you a better projection of how much you're gonna grow over a period of time, which is the root of what translates to eligibility. So beyond that,
But that doesn't translate into anything concrete or anything from the
No,
state.
no.
That's just we're guessing
mhm,
with our education and knowledge that at this stage, you might be eligible for match.
right.
That's all that would do.
But if we aren't, then we don't get anything. then.
Right,
Yeah.
except
Well-
for we've paid for that service. So, so in terms of the K-6 issues, and the class reduction grant,
How big was the K6 gonna be square footage wise?
we were getting 2.3 million.
Yeah, I'm saying,
Oh,
We
the
were
25 to
No,
30?
Yeah.
We
We were
just,
looking at walking
60,000 square foot.
Okay,
one
year.
will you go up
60.
to the
60.
expansion options? The screen right before this, the other way?
Sorry?
I think
That one looks really good right
this
now.
is a better option in terms of getting stuff immediately worked on to be able to take advantage of that grant and then go to, whether it's a capital levy or a capital bond, for getting the rest, and then also the high
Does
school.
doing this change our
Yes,
eligible square footage stuff?
because we're adding, yes, because
Yeah.
we're adding square footage. So
So-
yes, taking
so-
advantage of that grant actually hurts us for getting state match. I mean, that's the way that the state has worked it, which is backwards, but
Unless they change their system a few years down the road.
the square footage
Right.
that you'll construct, if you're doing portables, it doesn't count against your eligibility. But if you're
Right, but
doing
if we're-
hard,
taking the portables out of the mix and doing stick-built to take advantage of a grant
yeah,
that we have a timeline on, it damages us for.
So I
well,
guess my question to
either
the
you're getting
board-
it from the grant, you're not getting the bonus that you would think with the grant that you would, because
Right.
you're not gonna get that eligibility down the road. So the
Yeah.
model you'd wanna look at is, well, you have to do 10 classrooms
Yes.
associated with the grant, so if you're doing 10,
If you did the top two, just guessing, if you did any of those and Ludicolo is one of them, it's 3.35 to get 2.3, which is
at least,
a
that's,
good,
that's,
right, low, but
So I guess my
Is
question for the board and for something you guys to think about, because we're running out of time, is while I don't like losing out on a grant, I think the board really needs to consider, is the $2.3 million class size reduction grant worth pushing that state match out further?
How about taking the grant and just putting the 10 rooms like originally it was supposed to be, not including these, and then this eventually takes care of replacing the portables, and we still look at that 600 wing, we haven't talked about the 600 wing.
Yeah,
no, because it's only K3.
yeah.
So the,
Is-
So-
But I
The
mean, we still could do that too.
the
and
2
then we
point,
would-
we get 2.3 million if we build 10 classrooms.
Yes,
But
Yeah.
it costs,
another 3.8 now, doesn't it? Didn't you say?
Yeah, it's
We
gonna
went from
cost-
2 something to 3 something over
what's
the
it cost
last
to
3
build
years.
10 class, what's a, 2 million a classroom? 10, I mean,
how many?
6 million?
200.
I'm gonna
How
say
many
6
square
million
feet?
to build 10 classrooms in the right spot. So we have to come up with $4 million to build 10 classrooms. If we only build 5, we only get 1 million in match, so.
Just as a reminder for everyone too, that these would be direct, the number of classrooms per campus is replacing portables,
Right,
period. It's not actually expanding
right.
And creating capacity.
increased space unless you built that and kept the portables.
Yes.
Right, then you would, so I just want to as we look at this and keep in mind, I don't want to say, yeah, we go for this option, and then we're like, why do we still feel so crowded? Well, it's because we're trying to make it better for those students as far as, you know, the experience and being housed inside, but we would have to go above this if we wanted to actually expand the capacity for increased growth at the elementaries.
That's what I'm saying, then you
Yeah.
take the grant and you get just the 10 rooms, get the 10 rooms. Even though it costs the 3.8, you've got 10 rooms. Before you start replacing your portables, this replaces just the portables. You still got 10 rooms in your elementary.
Right, so, but the other side of it is, we're already 26,000 square feet over capacity. If we add these, we're even further over capacity by an extra 10,000.
Then we cut some of these down after we,
You can't reduce the size of the
If you
classroom.
build more square
have to
footage, it
build.
moves our cohort out farther, is what you're saying.
Yes.
No.
It builds
Cohort's
the
a real pain
state
in the butt,
match.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
It
what
is,
Jeanette's
but-
asking, is it worth it to take advantage of that 2.3 to bump out the possible state match even further?
Yeah, I mean, you could, depending on enrollment growth, I mean, we could be talking 10, 15 years, if not further than that. I mean, just, if we're just barely chipping away at it now and we continue to do that, I mean, we got 2,000 square feet. I mean, 26,000 divided by 2, 13 years.
Yeah.
but if we would have went ahead and done these rooms in 2016, 17, it was less $1 million.
Yeah,
It still's pushing that
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 time's
state
passed now.
number out, so
okay.
we need, we need to decide if we want to deal with those
Yeah.
two.
So
Could
I
I
just
see-
asked the board to think about it. We're really running short on time and we gotta tackle the high school, but just think about it, really consider it. It's a hard question. It is. I'll be
Yeah.
honest.
Go ahead, Dax.
Could I say just a couple
Yes.
things? With regard to the K3 grant, could you do portables with that still?
I
It's
have been
not- We're
told,
not gonna get the same amount.
oh, see,
You won't get the 2.3.
Cause the portable grant was different and it was smaller.
Right. Initially, it was a portable grant though, right? That was applied for, but then they let
Oh.
you translate it to.
Oh, I don't know that.
yeah, that's initially.
Originally, it was modular, that was my understanding. I would say this, if you need the classrooms and they're gonna participate, $2.3 million into that. If you need them to function and operate at the level you want, that's bird in hand. It's $2.3 million that if you forego that and you're waiting for state match in order to accommodate these students, well, that could be a long time. So, I mean, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, the student's gone through the system and, you know, so I've been dealing with it for almost 30 years, the cohort, and you're on the downward side of it here, but the reality of it was at one point when your enrollment did this, there was an opportunity to take advantage of it, and I think the original bond was 28.6 million local, and it ended to be over 100 and some million dollars worth of projects you're able to do utilizing that cohort, and you built right to it. It was right to the square footage when Wahitas was done. Not over, not under, but then you saw a slow kind of flattening of your enrollment, so it wasn't going up anymore, so they're saying, well, you don't need any more space now. And then it translates to that over house. What I would suggest is ask yourself the question, do you forego 2.3 million to wait 5, 7, 10 years to get that same money back? Because this new square footage will count against your cohort survival and your eligibility, but in a sense, you're getting a large portion of it with the 2.3 million to help construct those facilities now. Again, bird in hand, and rules can change. There's been discussion, you know, they talk a lot often about changing the way things are done, how it's looked at, how to better look at it, but something that's been in place as it is with this model and everyone's dependent on and followed as you did and others do, you know, when you're planning your facilities, there has to be something like this in place, and if there's gonna be major changes, then it has to be implemented over long periods of time so that it creates a level of fairness where some districts are not where you're at now, but they're where you're at 10 years ago, where you have all these tremendous facility problems, and they're moving forward in confidence knowing that they are eligible and it's gonna proceed. To summarize, you need to ask yourself, the classrooms associated with the grant, do you need them now? Is it essential to educate your kids? If the need's there, then I would try and find a way to construct those now, just based on growth. Because when you turn the other direction and you really start growing again to move the needle the other direction, that isn't the most significant thing in most cases. So that's one item. And then I really don't understand, the biggest concern I see when you're talking about pre-K and you start populating each of these sites with a lot of portable buildings is the fact that I know the pre-K underutilize some of the facilities. They don't use it at the same extent that the K6, K3, K8 kids do, but there's a draw from that facility's core space, and as you start adding all that perimeter square footage, these facilities weren't designed to support that quantity of students. So to me, it throws up a red flag to me, not knowing all the dynamics of the programs or how they'll shift or where they'll go. I just know that when you start adding that quantity of portables, whether they're pre-K or other, to a site that was built to support core space wise, when I say core space, kitchen, gym space, administrative spaces, etc., that gets overwhelmed and that becomes a facility that doesn't function that was designed and intended pretty quickly. So
Custodial, parking.
yeah, exactly. So maybe what you think about is if you go back to each of those sites and you take just a little bit of time as a group, and I can't do it for you. I mean, I could, but it wouldn't be what you want. You should go and look back at each of those sites and ask yourself, at McFarland, at Scootney, what is our optimal operational picture there at those facilities? You know, what's happening there now? Do we have too many students? Do we need to add a classroom or two? Is that where you do it? Is that where the K3 grant money maybe goes, or a portion of it? What's that optimal school? What's McFarland, etc.? Instead of trying to make it overly complicated, start with that. What's optimal for those K8 students? And then look at another model, mutually exclusive potentially of those two, that says what's best for the pre-K kids and what kind of a facility might be the optimal facility to support those kids without impacting the others, you know, to where you're solving one problem but you're creating other problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds really simple, but those would be my initial thoughts. Try and simplify it and look at each of the sites, see what the need is, see what the optimal function of it is as it is currently intended and operating, and then look at options for the pre-K. Do the pre-K need to be spread amongst the facility for any other reason other than the ability to house? Vicinity to other programs, this, that, the pre-K. If you had
Mostly just kitchen. And
If you had a site and you could construct a 15,000 square foot modular facility and you got maybe a grant and you blended it with Head Start, I've seen these, I mean, there's one being built in Wenatchee now that we're managing, the ESD in Yakima is working on. They have the Head Start contract, but they're blending it, but it could be blended with pre-K. I've seen it. I know Richland's done that. So is that a viable option? You know, you look at doing something like that, and something that as the pre-K program grew, you could easily expand it. But also you want it to be a functional space and not, you know, have a scattered portable city for them too, because it is obviously one of the most important aspects of kids' education too. So Does that make sense? So.
Is there
So it's
anything
them.
else? Is there anything else that, did you still need to say that?
Yeah, that's
certainly is-
mostly on the K6.
Yeah, as Sharon talked about, not to forget the high school
Yeah.
and their needs, of course. And so this is the final slide, and it's one that you've seen before, but just to bring it back. Where this does, where the other was looking at just replacing the portables, but not an expansion to help with overcrowding, this would be replacing portables and expected growth to be prepared for that, and replacing the 600 wing, which we toured. So the cost here would be would address those issues.
And that would give us 25 classes?
Sorry.
25 classes for the 8.5 million? It's everything combined?
I can't have that fast. It's gonna be more.
There's no soft costs in there and the
There's no
cost
soft
per
costs.
square foot for new.
And then what's the new and lieu for this building for 600 and,
It's
Yeah, where are we?
12,564 square feet of new and lieu. So if you took down the 600 wings, that's what you have eligibility for. So about 12,500 square feet. So the 12 classrooms on the left would be matchable, but they only match up to 238.22, and then times your match ratio. So 85.66. So anything beyond 238 a square foot, construction-wise, is
can you
all your-
translate that into a number?
I definitely think I did that wrong.
Yeah, so I can calculate that for you if you want to look
Like in
at.
2 minutes or less?
What about, does that include?
Rough number.
Does that include, John, moving and building it into the corridor so that it can be for safety measures we can implement into, or is that a separate amount of money?
The 8.5 million at 350 a square foot is just construction costs. It doesn't include architecture, it doesn't include
Design.
engineering costs, it doesn't include.
But to your point, so that would be something that we'd want to look into. So if that was
To make that
what we wanted to make it so it was all
all
connected,
connected, the two
then that's
six-
something that we need to bring the architects in and look
Okay.
at that, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Is
I'm
the
sure it's
200
gonna be
wing
high.
eligible for new and lieu?
200 wing is not eligible for new and lieu for 10 more years.
Okay.
We were talking about tearing that down just because of its location.
Yeah.
Just to be
So-
able to tie it into the rest of the building.
Do you have a magic number, Dax?
So yeah, if you took down 12,564 square feet, which is what they're saying your 912 new and lieu mod is eligible, that's gonna generate about 3 million in state match. So you'd
Okay.
have to tear that down and build 12,500 square feet, 912 space,
Yes. Okay.
and you're gonna get 3 million of it paid by the state. Now these, I would change those numbers to 400 a square foot now, and then multiply it times 1.30.
Right, I've seen that you are not happy with any of these numbers throughout all of the
I'm just,
presentation.
I thought you were
I've seen
wanting an
that.
idea what it would cost, so.
Greg and Orland are gonna build them, that's why they're so cheap.
I'll help, well, yeah, I get it. I'm just
Okay,
saying, right?
he just said he's helping.
Recent new construction bids, 370, 373, 369, and you're heading into probably one of the busiest school construction markets in the last 20 years. So those numbers are gonna go up, and the other fact is you don't really have any economy of scale. They're very small projects.
And about a 5 to 6% every year after that.
Right.
Well, I always have one for inflation. If you look at a 10-year period, it's almost always 3%. If you're looking at specifics and you're averaging it, 4 conservatively over a period of time.
Okay.
But if you look at any 10-year span, it's about 3.
I think we need to plan another another workshop. Can we plan that right now? I mean, I know we're already over time.
Oh, I say one more thing about the high school. You do have 53,349 square feet of unhoused eligibility at the high school,
Yay!
which means that the state would pay roughly 12.5 million if you built 53,000 square feet of new space at the high school, which you needed,
Not counting the new and lieu.
no on top of it. So
Right.
you'd be, if you did the 12.5 and you did 53.3, you'd generate about 15 million in state help on that.
Campus,
Wow,
So that would be,
Build DOHS?
DOHS.
yeah, because they would include,
That would,
that'd
that
be
would-
included, because it's the
that would be
912.
included if it was a campus within a campus. The DOE.
On-
Or a campus on a campus. Not something you need to deal
Yeah.
with, but just
Yeah.
if we move to that other campus there, that's what we're
I
referring
could
to.
build you a budget before the next one for the 12,564 as an individual, and then one for, would you build all 53,000 at the high school? I mean,
We need it.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
not
the
like that's
previous,
not, yeah.
the previous bond was 94,000 square feet.
Whoa.
That was to get to a 10-year out, 10-year
Can you
out.
put those numbers on a document, get it to them so that they can get it to us by the next board meeting? Is that a reasonable time frame?
When's the next board meeting?
February
A week from today, can you have it to them?
Yeah.
Okay?
So how do you
Then,
want that structured, though? So individual.
can we talk after about those details?
Yep.
Sorry, we're already beyond our time
I'm
here.
with you, I'm just trying to
Um,
know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
We need
she
to
said,
buy-
she said a week, which would
Yeah.
put it.
Yes, right.
Perfect.
So, can we plan another workshop now?
So I
Some
just
things
want
we have to discuss.
53,000 square feet, so the 12,000 new and lieu takes care, this is 24,000 square feet. So that takes care of 12 classrooms. So we would, and that leaves 12,000 square feet there, we need a total of 53, so we're still 41,000 square feet away from
Well, we're
being able to
there.
use it. We would have to build,
Well, we would
These
plan for
eight-
even more
Yeah,
expansion
sure.
than what we,
Right.
and if
Well,
we
and
include DOHS.
That's just classrooms, that's not counting hallways or
Circulation.
anything, or
And that's
bathrooms
just-
There
or
was
anything.
extensive
So there's,
tie-in points in order for
Yeah,
it to
there's
be
a
a
lot of
viable
that.
addition. There was discussions about a new entry on that south side, vacating lot to allow room, the site's constricted. I wouldn't start dotting the high school site with portables because it will just,
make it worse,
yes.
right. So,
Unless you master plan it, and then you're showing it, but the 94,000, you can go up higher, 2-story there. But if you were constricted to that site and staying with the high school site, because if you move down the street, you have 15 million in infrastructure costs. In a high school, you can't afford to build because you don't have the bonding capacity, which you have about 50 million.
yeah.
50
Moving down the-
million over the next 2 years in bonding capacity.
when's the next time we can meet?
Can I,
Is there
I'm
something?
gonna look at my calendar while I'm looking at that. Jeanette, when we come to our next meeting, can you give me a price on what 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, and $50 million bond will cost, like the average citizen, like per thousand?
Got it, so,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Could you email that to me?
And then the
I'll
maximum
put
amount of a capital levy as well.
Yeah, I have the $20 million option in a capital levy.
Okay,
So the most we
I'll
could
put it in
bond
the
is 50
meeting.
million, Dax?
Hmm?
Did you say our
Yeah.
community, the most we could do is 50 million?
The last
Yeah, right now that's about right.
projection I saw was in 2 years, you had a little over 52 million.
and the max we
in
can levy is 20?
There's not a max on a levy, but the max years you can do is 6.
Okay,
It's difficult to build with the levy.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If
Not really
if we're
a
gonna do
levy
something this
is a
magnitude,
simple majority, bond is,
But you're only
Super.
select, you
But-
could only,
yeah.
it's a.
I know,
5
but
years,
he
6
just had a
years.
whole bunch of awesome numbers.
So.
Anyways, we gotta look at every option we
You're
have.
back
Said he had a
24th?
hammer, so he was gonna
Oh,
I'll be here the
yes.
24th.
Okay,
So Wednesday, the
I'd
26th.
rather. I'm getting to it, I got the hammer.
I can do the
Wednesday,
26th.
Sometimes.
Wednesday, the
February?
26th.
Yes.
Like, well, you
Can
can
you
work
do the
on this, you
20?
can come
Yes.
help roof it, I'm like,
Okay.
I'll roof it.
February 26th doesn't work?
When are you back?
26th.
No,
Are you-
I'm not back.
What?
February 26th.
Okay.
I mean, I would have to go make sure I find a babysitter if they go to 10 o'clock.
No, I want
Messed up, yeah.
it shouldn't be, 2 hours of this is enough.
Is it
for
listed
anybody.
What
as
about
not
the 4th?
recognized?
That
Yeah.
evening.
Well, yeah.
Because we already have
Hold on.
something on the second. Can we do the 4th?
We're changing.
Because it's not on that list.
Yeah, the 26th is not an
It's in
option,
there.
so we're trying to
Yeah,
go,
but
the
it's just-
second
it's
we already
just
have
not
something, can we do the
It's
4th?
not on the list.
4th
to
of
be
March.
Looked
The
at
week
by.
you're there, I can.
March
The
4th.
week you're back,
I mean, like-
I don't wanna put myself that.
Is everyone yes on March
Condition
4th?
assessment.
Yeah.
Sharon,
All good.
that's March
Yeah,
4th.
they
You're
list
okay
certain
before?
facilities don't get, I mean, if they're not a K-12,
I'm not
they
young.
get listed as inventory, but
You are?
Okay.
Young at heart.
But because it's not
I
a
mean, I
learning
don't
facility,
think
that's
there's
why it's
anything
like.
wrong.
Well, at the next meeting, we'll, you'll be
that's an
able to,
anomaly because it got state money
Yes.
to build it.
Yes.
so-
okay, let's plan on that for now.
Okay.
here.
Um,
We're
would
gonna
you-
screw
would
the
you like
ball in
Dax
by
there?
not getting that funds for us, really, but we're not reporting and doing it correctly.
He's got good information, yes.
Well,
Can
you
we
need
have
a
the
building
information
condition
before?
assessment. I have
He's gonna get it
people
to
that
us.
could come up and
Thank
what
you.
you come and do in a day. And
Whoa.
update at night goes for you if you need to.
Okay,
Unless we
just
want to plan a
wanna do-
3-hour meeting.
Well, I'm just.
bring a blanket and a pillow.
Well, you can call,
Okay. So
you can call Heinley.
we will tentatively
John Heinley and ask
set
him, you know, our
March
ICOs
4th
reflects the
for
transportation
facilities workshop, once
law,
again,
because,
6 to 8 is what we'll plan on.
I just lost the term. but
Realizing that,
labeling
you know,
of it.
we're a few minutes over tonight, but these aren't easy decisions. This is so complex, and we could be here till midnight. But at least we got some numbers out of the way here. We've got some information coming. I will charge the board by the next board meeting that we concentrate on our asphalt situation out at the transportation center and our track bid. And hopefully we can give some green light at our
And
next meeting.
K3 grant, decide, thinking on
Okay.
if you want to move forward with doing something to utilize those funds, or if we're gonna wait and, you know,
If you,
Oh,
if
get
you
more
could get
state
more,
action.
more definite verbiage or something from the state as to where it needs to be in the process to
Mhm.
maximize it and not lose it before June.
okay.
That
Yeah.
might help us determine what we gotta do, when we gotta do it.
Do you want, the district to do anything else, in preparation for the next facilities meeting on the 4th as far as options go?
If you get the 53,000 square feet or whatever, try to figure out something
Okay, so you want
for,
Information
work on the high school.
from,
yeah,
yes.
Okay,
based on what Deb says.
work on the high school, do you want any, okay, so work on the high school and a long-term plan and all of that.
And the pricing for the
And
different
Lindsay's
price, the
request,
different
yeah.
millions,
Okay,
For the what?
2,000. Oh, if we ran a $20 million bond, what that would
The bonds
cost,
and levies.
what that would
Tax
cost the
rates.
taxpayer if we ran a 30, 40, 50.
Is that
All right.
Mark
We have it
Crossing,
written down.
Thank you.
are
Ladies and
you
gentlemen,
available March 4th?
March 4th?
We can select a meeting and ask you.
Yeah. I don't, what day of the week is it?
A
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
We can push.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. Those that came to be with us tonight, thank you very much as well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to go home.
It is.
We're doing a safety workshop and a facilities workshop that